Hi, everyone, and welcome to Valley of Depth, a podcast from Archaea Media. At Archaea, we build media brands around the critical technologies shaping national security through journalism, events, and original research. That includes payload for space, ignition for nuclear energy, and tectonic for defense tech. With Valley of Depth, we go even deeper, talking to founders, investors, policymakers, and military leaders shaping some of the most complex and consequential technologies on the planet. Today's guest is Mikkel Vestergaard, the CEO of Sceye, a company building stratospheric platforms that aim to redefine how we connect, observe, and protect the Earth from 65,000 feet above it. Sceye's high-altitude airships operate in a zone above drones and below satellites. They can loiter over a region for months at a time, carrying telco payloads, climate sensors, or even surveillance gear at what Mikkel says is a fraction of the cost of traditional systems. In this episode, we talk about why the stratosphere is emerging as the next layer of infrastructure, what it takes to convince skeptics and investors that this platform makes sense, and how Sceye could reshape connectivity, climate intelligence, and national security. Let's get started. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick word about Payload Pro, our premium subscription for deep dive space industry insights, analysis on trends, and exclusive research you won't find anywhere else. Each week, we go beyond the headlines with original reporting, investor perspectives, and detailed financial models. Recent topics include SpaceX's projected 2025 financials, Kuiper's business economics, and the resurgence of satellite manufacturing. We also just published our first report, The Case for Space, a 50-page investor's guide to the space economy. If you're in the business of space or just want to understand it like an insider, subscribe now at pro.payloadspace.com. That's pro.payloadspace.com. Mikkel, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So you have a very interesting background before you started Sceye. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Sceye, but I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your background and what you did prior to that. You've done a lot of humanitarian work. So just to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my life before Sceye, it's actually not too different from what it is now. I've spent my career building companies with a strong focus on mission and purpose, and on a technology platform that was centered around material science. And it's with that in mind that I've built a company in public health, in food security, in safe drinking water, and now also in aerospace.
And what exactly, tell me a little bit more about the work you did. Specifically, I mean, you did some work around malaria, you did some work around, on the company LifeStraw. So give me a little bit on sort of that journey and what prompted you to do that.
Yeah, so I started my first company in West Africa when I was 19, and have been an entrepreneur ever since. But yeah, specifically in public health, we invented a polyester fiber that we could package with insecticide and control the release of the active molecule to the surface of the fiber over time. So if you make something like a bed net out of it, it kills the insect on impact. And because we can control the surface concentration, safe for the people who sleep under it. And over the span of 18, 19 years, we distributed a little over 1 billion nets and saw global malaria rates drop from 1.3 million people, mainly children, dying every year to roughly 600,000. So more than a 50% reduction in that time span. But let me rush to say that this was not the work of one entrepreneur or one company. This was an incredible partnership. The U.S. government was incredibly generous, and I certainly hope they will continue to be. We were just a tool builder in the process, essentially.
Well, I can tell that you really actually care about the work, and you it's important to you because you don't like talking about it. Most people
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying most people that do that kind of work are like love to, if I ask that question, we'll probably spend 15 minutes talking about how amazing they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it really, like, I mean, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't so fortunate to be seeing a significant gap between those who have and those who don't, and having been exposed to the real understanding that the true measure of human welfare really is average life expectancy, and that's 50 some years in the poorest countries and 80 some years in the wealthiest, and that's an intolerable gap, and we as entrepreneurs have a significant opportunity to help close that gap. And yeah, in that you also asked about LifeStraw, which really sort of got on the global map with Guinea worm eradication, teaming up with the Carter Center that was led by the former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who unfortunately left us in January this year. But under his leadership, we were also tool builder and distributor in the fight against Guinea worm, which we took together with them from 3.5 million cases annually, spread over sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, to last year down to only 11 cases globally, down from 3.5 million, with only 4 countries left. So likely the second disease ever to be eradicated, 6 years after smallpox was eradicated, which was the first. Something to be truly excited about, because the world has dropped the ball on disease eradication. But again, not the work of one company. We really just followed the dust of Carter's feet.
Well, just for the benefit of the audience, what is LifeStraw?
LifeStraw is a drinking water, a water filter that's built into a drinking straw. So it's essentially an extruded hollow fiber, and it's very much in line with how the other companies have been built. Chemical compounding in and around synthetic fibers is really at the core of our platform, and so while we're at close to at least eliminating the disease, Guinea worm, the second one ever. We also have a give back program in East Africa with now 12 million children involved. That makes it one of the largest, if not the largest, development aid program on the planet.
Yeah, amazing. I think I told you this when we first met, but I'm actually a consumer of LifeStraw. I purchased it.
Thank you very much for your support.
Before I knew who you were, by the way. So when I first read or saw, or maybe you told me that you are part of part of LifeStraw, I was like, wait a minute, I just bought that very recently. So very cool. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now. Why did you pivot from global health and public health to aerospace? And talk about how one does that, because you don't often hear about that type of change in industry as far as entrepreneurial endeavors go.
I think I essentially wanted to step up my impact a little bit. And having spent a couple of decades working in silos, a silo in public health, a silo in food security, a silo in safe drinking water, although they all three contribute to improving average life expectancy in the countries where we operate, I was really keen on working at a level where we could credibly talk about systems and scale. And what the aerospace industry can offer, and what HAPS in particular can offer, the stratospheric layer, is this incredible platform for scale. And as we're designing a platform that can stay over an area of operation for a long time and stay at altitude for a long time with a very high lifting and powering capacity, the potential for having many instruments on board and have an impact on hundreds of different areas at the same time, and therefore work at a systemic level, that was very appealing.
Right. And well, okay, so tell us a little bit about Sceye. Like, what is the product and how did you come up with it? Like, what was the founding story behind the platform?
Oh, I didn't come up with that. I was advising NASA at the time when I came across a report that was promoting this idea, and it was really promoted as as a platform for science. Park in the stratosphere, you're 95 to 97% through the atmosphere, and that's a great platform for science and the ability to look up and look at birth of stars and study black holes and look at asteroids on collision course with Earth. And I was reading that and thinking, sure, but you can also look down and then have a far more significant contribution to closing communication gaps, and they're through that also lifting people out of poverty, the potential to work on human trafficking prevention, ocean conservation, early detection of wildfire, other pollutants. It was just very, very significant, and the possibility that one platform could do all that, I thought was appealing, and what was exactly the answer to working at a greater systems level and scale level than I had in the past.
So HAPS, which I believe stands for High Altitude Platform Stations. Systems, high altitude platform systems. So it's not exactly mainstream technology, right? It sits between...
And it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but that's the abbreviation that the agencies, NASA and ESA and JAXA came up with. So we're living with it.
Right. Well, it's not too bad. But so it sits between kind of drones and satellites. And how do you explain the platform to someone seeing it for the first time?
I explain it exactly as it is, and in the most simple way. We're aerodynamically shaped, filled with helium as a lifting gas. So it's a lighter than air technology. We have solar power for daytime. We have battery for nighttime. And we use that to feed electric propulsion, which combined with our aerodynamic shape allows us to point into the wind and stay over an area of operation. That means that unlike drones, we stay up, and unlike low Earth orbit satellites, we stay over the same area. And the only other thing that can do that is essentially a geostationary satellite, but in order to be geosynchronous with the planet, they're at 36,000 kilometers altitude, so 1,800 times further away than we are. That essentially makes us a geostationary platform superimposed on the surface of the planet with lifting and powering capacity as much as the biggest platforms.
So, okay, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to ask a series of what I would call stupid questions. Question number one, why did you choose an airship format over like a balloon or a fixed-winged aircraft? Like, what are the advantages like over other systems?
Yeah, it seemed very logical to me at the time because we came into this with a material science background, so completely unmarried to any existing technology, and so had a just sort of a very objective review of the various types of platforms that was out there, and it seemed obvious to me that the fixed wing would easily be caught in what's called a coffin corner. So they can't put more solar panels on than what would fit on these skimpy wings. They don't have a lot of real estate up there. They can't lift a lot of battery, and they need propulsion to stay up. So they consume more power, they store less power, and they generate less power. And so while we fly through the night, they turn into a glider and eventually come down. Balloons, they can lift as much as we can because we're equally scalable, but their form factor prevents them from properly steering and properly powering payload.
Got it. And then what type of payloads can the platform carry? You mentioned size, but like give us a little sense of like what is the size of payload that the system can carry?
Yeah, so we've already carried massive MIMO arrays to the stratosphere to show that we can connect directly to any mobile, any cell phone on the ground with FCC-defined speeds for broadband, 100 megabit per second down and 20 up. We've flown hyperspectral imaging in August last year. We did our first ever methane monitoring from the stratosphere, identified several super emitters, handed that data over to EPA. All our flights are with what we call SkyCam, so a camera that we've developed with a moving mirror lens, and that just an 800 millimeter off the shelf lens gives us 7 centimeter pixel on ground. So that's the extreme advantage of our vantage point. We've flown with atmospheric listening from Sandia. We've flown with synthetic aperture radar, and we're actually having a flight again later this year with synthetic aperture radar that's likely going to be sponsored by the Coast Guard.
Got it. And as autonomous or pilot?
Yeah, they're initially piloted, and we will eventually go to what we'll call human-assisted autonomy.
Got it. Okay, so how human-assisted autonomy, meaning there's someone who's controlling it physically from the ground?
Well, somebody will be pinged if there is an off-nominal situation, but for now and for the foreseeable future, we will have people in control room.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to ask my next stupid question. When someone sees a system like yours, and they immediately think Hindenburg, right? Why is that wrong?
Well, it's wrong for a number of reasons. One, we're not manned. Two, it's hard to see us when we're at 65,000 feet. You really got to know where we are. Three, we use helium, not hydrogen. And we also have a safety track record that's pretty stellar. And we're building a data set really that says if everything goes wrong, we're safe as a balloon.
Right. And did any of your earlier kind of material science work inform the design decisions at Sceye?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because one of the things that we learned when we started was that there had been previous attempts at building what at that time was called the stratospheric airship. But many of those were large government programs from the late 90s, early 2000s that existed at a time where some of the materials that we're using today hadn't been discovered yet. A great example of that is a graphene that was discovered, I think, in 2004, which we are using today to make batteries more energy dense, which we're using today to dramatically increase the strength relative to weight of our hull fabric. And all this adds to the ability to close the power loop. That we define as the ability to fly through both day and night. And when the sun comes up the next morning, we're still at the same altitude and we're still over the same area of operation. And so we did spend the first couple of years of Scye's existence understanding and developing the materials that would eventually allow us to close the power loop.
When you first started pitching Sceye to investors, how did they respond? And what convinced your early backers that this wasn't science fiction?
So we needed to have significant proof points before we had any backers. And so we had a strong devotion to iterative development. We started small with a 9-foot version. Then that was in November 2016. And the following year, we flew a 70-foot version, then a 105-foot version. So the picture I'm painting is of a company that starts small, builds bigger and bigger, flying higher and higher with more and more capacity. And then eventually in May of 2021, we reached the stratosphere and flew around there for the first time. And that marked the opening of the first round. Until then, I had funded everything myself.
Got it. Okay. And what's the most common misconception investors or partners have had or have about stratospheric platforms that you've heard or that you've seen or that maybe you want to address?
Yeah, exactly as you alluded to earlier. The belief is that this is science fiction, but we now have closed the power loop, which is where people are most skeptic that could ever be done. But we did that in August last year. And so Now we're in an endurance program, getting a baseline for endurance, understanding what work streams we need to engage in order to really push endurance. But we have by far overcome the biggest hurdle out there.
What so how long can you fly for now?
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to get our arms around in this flight program. So I'm about 3 or 4 months away from being able to tell you that.
Okay, got it. Is there any kind of like range or kind of idea you can give us right now? Like, okay, like I expect it to be from X to Y.
Oh, we're expected to be several months.
Oh wow. Okay. Interesting. Okay. And okay. Well, then let's actually talk. This maybe lends itself well to use cases. So let's talk about use cases and applications. You gave us a little bit of flavor of that, but let's talk about let's maybe start with telecommunications. What can the platform do for the telco industry? And I know you've signed some interesting deals. I'll let you share.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting part for us has been. We never really went down that mainstream road of spending a whole lot of time pitching to Sand Hill Road. Right out of the gate, we were very focused on strategic investors because it allowed not only for the influx of capital, but also a fine-tuned strategic direction, eye on the horizon with the biggest KPI, which is time to market, and an extreme certainty that market is there. And we have now signed the first contract with one of our equity investors that also wants to be our first customer. And that's mobile broadband. So that is a massive MIMO array in the stratosphere connecting directly to smartphones on the ground. But we're not really competing with towers and fiber optic cables, nor are we competing with satellites. There's a wide area between those two. Towers really aren't built anymore when you drop below 25 people per square kilometer. It varies a little bit from country to country because average revenue per user is different, but as a rule of thumb, they're not. And satellites don't really service population densities more than one person per square kilometer because you can only fit so much traffic inside that cone, which drops in capacity with altitude. And I think that's the interesting part, right? So not only is that space from 25 people per square kilometer down to one person per square kilometer relatively untapped, and it's a large space. Up until 2017, 25 people per square kilometer was the average population density on the planet. So it is a very large space we're talking about. But if you look at sort of how ITU is carving out the definitions of 6G, they are absolutely understanding the relationship between altitude of your antenna. Is it on the ground? Is it in the stratosphere? Is it in space? And the population density you serve. And with that in mind, the space that is being carved out for the stratosphere is a significant portion in the ability to have a ubiquitous network.
When you say ubiquitous, what does that mean?
It is essentially being defined as reasonable internet for everyone, underscoring everyone.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay, so let me ask my first question. So you said that right now, it sounds like what you're saying is the strongest business case to make to operators is this segment of the market, which is 25 people per square kilometer, right? That's where it's untapped. That's like the early sort of low-hanging fruit.
The early low-hanging fruit is right there. Yes.
Okay, and then in your, have you done any kind of?
Yeah, 25 and below.
Okay, and from your kind of early estimates, like how big is that market? Like what could that mean for you?
Yeah, that's still in the hundreds of billions.
Got it. Okay. So then the idea is you have this kind of early untapped market, but then the long-term goal is to provide internet globally.
In the telecommunication case, yes, will be an integral part of 6G when that comes. But in terms of 4G, LG, and 5G, it is the initial rollout is connecting areas that are not economical for existing tower companies or existing operators to connect.
Right. So it's not necessarily to replace cell towers; it's to augment cell towers.
Yes, absolutely. And the
Okay.
same with satellites. We're not
Right.
there to challenge anyone. They've
Yeah.
got their core business. They're great at it. We're filling a gap that isn't currently filled.
How many? Just to give you a sense, like how many of these systems? How many? Like just looking ahead, how many of these platforms would we need to provide global coverage?
About 15 or 16,000.
15 or 16,000, and because they are in the stratosphere, it's not getting in the way of normal air traffic.
No, we're way above normal air
Yeah,
traffic.
right. Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit. So you mentioned there's a operator you're working with who's also an equity investor. Can you share who that is?
Yeah, we're actually working with three. So in Latin America, it's American Mobile. In the Middle East, it's Mawarid, the owners of Salam. They've got on the world map and they bought out Iridium or helped buy out Iridium from Motorola. And in Asia, it's SoftBank, which most people here probably know as from their VC arm, but the core business is telco. They're the largest or second largest telco in Japan, depending on which day you check.
So what does that product, what does that rollout look like? So you've signed 3 deals with 3 large operators effectively. And so when are we kind of in, we're in test mode right now, but when do you expect to be live commercially?
Yeah, so we're flying next year what is being referred to as a pre-commercial flight, which is essentially launching from New Mexico, flying in the stratosphere to Japan, and turning on the massive MIMO array and showing that we can connect directly to smartphones on the ground, backhaul into their core network, and testing levels of interference and testing everything that they want to have tested while we do so. And then after multiple weeks of pre-commercial flight, the intent is to fly back and land in New Mexico again.
Got it. Okay. And so out of curiosity, like how much capital have you raised so far?
I believe we're a little over $250 million.
Okay. And is that is that mostly from strategics?
Yes, that is mostly from strategics.
Okay, got it. Well, first of all, congratulations on that. Flying a little bit under the radar. Okay, so on the telco side, like if you were to paint a picture of what future telco architecture,
comment on that we're flying a little bit below the radar. Obviously, that was a pun that was probably not intended, but the
hey, maybe it was,
or maybe
yeah.
When people say not intended, it often was, but I truly believe this one wasn't. But we have seen over the last 2 or 3 decades so much talk about the stratosphere, and it has unfortunately stayed with a lot of talk about the stratosphere, and then people falling flat when they had to go out and actually build and fly. So we wanted to just flip the script on that and fly first and talk later. And I think that has taken a lot of people by surprise, that we had managed to close the power loop in the stratosphere.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's amazing. I mean, the tech progress, and then also raising $250 million and not being in the traditional Silicon Valley kind of circles. Like, I mean, I mean, it's all intentional, which I appreciate, and it makes a ton of sense. Outside of telco, like, what are the other use cases for this?
Yeah, we increasingly find ourselves, we lend ourselves very well to just standing and staring. And there's a number of areas where that is useful. That is useful and we're actually demonstrating 3 of them in this flight season. We have a flight that's coming up in the next 2 months where we're flying hyperspectral imaging combined with some other optical, where we are showcasing as we're standing over an area for a long period of time and just staring, that we can see methane leaking from an oil field in real time, including with our vantage point, see the specific emitter with methane pixel sub 1 meter. Because we're station keeping, we can see the rate of emission, and we can see that in real time with E-band backhaul. And with our optical, we can provide operational input such as, hey, oil company such and such, well number 62, has been leaking 108 kilos of methane for the last 108 kilos of methane per hour for the last 6 minutes. And by the way, your thief hatch is open. Go close it. We'll tell you when you're not leaking anymore. So that should be interesting for both private and public sector, to be able to turn a leak into a revenue opportunity instead of turning it into a naming and shaming and fining. On wildfire, that's another case we're flying this year, where we're documenting the ability to see a fire as it ignites, rather than addressing it after it spirals out of control, which was the case in, you and I think, are both sitting in California. So that was the case with Sonoma, with Paradise, with LA. They were all significant fires before they were identified. But more than that, stay over the area and help coordinate. Stay over the area and be eyes on everything, whether that's with connectivity or eye on airborne assets or ground-based assets, so that airspace doesn't have to close, but you can actually continue operation. So there's a lot of things that we could do there. We're also having a flight this year where we are flying synthetic aperture radar over water. We're likely having Coast Guard as sponsor for that flight. This is essentially to show that we can take search out of search and rescue. Again, by just standing over an area and staring over a very large area.
So what are the advantages over satellites for this type of sensing? Is it the resolution quality? Is it the nature, the real-time nature of it? Because obviously satellites have revisit rates, so you can miss things in that scenario. Like, what are the advantages? Is there a cost advantage?
We have two concepts of operation. One where we are mowing a landscape, exactly what you would think I'm saying, just going back and forth over a landscape. And there you can talk about costs relative to satellites, costs relative to Cessnas, and there we will far outcompete them. But when we're standing over an area in a station keeping or station seeking position, we are really doing something that no one else can do. And that's the interesting part. Because satellites truly just are passing by in orbit, and and drones can't stay, and so the persistency is new.
Got it. Okay. Well, this kind of lends itself to thinking about national security related use cases. Like, is there anything there that you're working on, that you're spending time on?
Yeah. Yes and no. So we often get the question about ISR. Whether that's something we lend ourselves well to. And I don't think we do, because we're big, we're slow. If you know where we are, we're possibly visible from the ground. But my point is, we're not really sneaking up on anyone. And so we do lend ourselves, on the other hand, very well to a home turf environment, where you stay and have eyes on your coastline, where you stay and look over the horizon. That we would lend ourselves very well to. And we do have some conversations initiated there.
Got it. So talk to me a little bit about the business model, because I can see you having different business models across different industries, right? You have like this system where you're like, okay, well, we're going to just be this like effectively parked cell tower in space, or excuse me, in the stratosphere. You have this imagery like business, which you could own and operate yourself. Like, what does that look like across all these different customer bases? Like, how are you thinking about kind of go to market?
Yeah, but across all of these, we're essentially infrastructure as a service. And yeah, and so that's the commonality here. And where that is very clear in the telecommunications space, which is the area we will move into first. I think we may still have some fine-tuning to do about what exactly that means in government space, where there are preset tenders. But we have a lot of loyalty to an infrastructure as a service business model, I'm convinced that is how the government business will also come to market.
So right now, are your earliest customers, like you mentioned earlier, are going to be the telco operators?
Yes.
And then how do you see that customer base evolve? Like what do you expect to be your kind of next iteration of customers? In what industries? What do those look like?
I'm very keen on both Coast Guard and also wildfire monitoring, early detection, coordination, even pre-fire landscaping, mapping the southern states with LiDAR so that you can pre-position where fires are most likely to start, so that you know where your fire fuel is and where the fire will travel to once it starts. So you can map all that out.
So how many people are on the team now?
We're 60-some, close to 70 at this point. We're still a small team.
Okay, and out of curiosity, what are the types of folks that you're hiring to build this out? Like, what are the types of skills that you need, and anyone in specific that you kind of want to highlight in terms of like I mean, because yes, you're building a platform that is mentioned earlier, you didn't necessarily invent, but you've optimized and you've made better. But have there been other companies like this in the past that you can draw insight from? Like, talk to me a little bit about how you've built this team.
Yeah, because it's so many different disciplines that have to come together, that we also have a wide pool that we're drawing from. Some are coming in from the EV sector. Some are coming in from the satellite industry. Some are coming in from sports, whether that is America's Cup or Formula One, because there's a lot of overlap in pushing materials to the extreme, but doing that still in a safe way. So yeah, the pools are very interesting.
And what about the manufacturing process, right? So like how quickly can you build one of these?
So we're not in parallel production yet. So if you look from at serious production from start till finish, we're close to 6 months.
Got it. Okay. And then and what does scale look like for you in terms of over the next 5 years?
Yeah, over the next 5 to 10 years, we will be going from 10 to 100 to 1,000, and whether that takes us 10 years or 15 years, that's still to be seen. But the potential is undoubtedly there, right? Because the vision here must also be one where seeing high altitude platform systems must be as normal as seeing ships in the port and trains on the track.
Right. And so you've raised $250 million so far. How much more capital do you need before you can be self-sustaining or before you get to scale?
That's a question I'll be in a better position to answer towards the end of this year when we wrap up the flight program. But I don't think it's not going to be as crazy as you may imagine, because once we tap into the market, this is a highly profitable, highly scalable offering.
And what keeps you up at night? It seems like you have a product that works. It seems like you have a customer base. I mean, you've already brought on firms like SoftBank, right? And if SoftBank's an equity investor as well, they obviously see significant potential. So that's great. You've de-risked quite a bit of the platform. You've solved the power loop issue. Like, what is the thing that you feel like could potentially? What are the risks out there that you still worry about?
Yeah, but my answer is going to be boringly similar to anybody else that works in frontier technology. It's the unknown unknowns, at the risk of going Donald Rumsfeld on you, but it really is the unknown unknowns. So
you see a future where the stratosphere becomes a new infrastructure layer?
Absolutely. This is very clear to me. Lifting significant portions of the infrastructure to a level where it becomes far more efficient is really what this is about.
And ultimately, why don't you think that that's happened yet? Has it been a technology?
Why it hasn't happened yet?
Yes. Is it a technology issue? Is it?
The materials did not exist to close the power loop until recently.
And then, if we're thinking of 10 years from now, like what does Sceye look like as a business? How do you define success for Sceye and for yourself? And I want to take you back to, what you said at the beginning of this conversation, which is like, you've always been interested in building things that are impactful ultimately to humanity and society. So like for that, what does that look like? What does success look like for you with Sceye?
Yeah, but it is just that. Because if we go back to sort of scale and systems, we go back to breaking the silos between the various areas of impact. So let's take this as an example. This is, I believe, iPhone 15 or 16 or something like that, right? So when that came out 15, 16 years ago, we really had no idea which apps would eventually be on this thing. And I look at Sceye very much like that. The platform that can carry hundreds of different instruments at the same time and perform 1,000 different tasks at the same time. And so throughout this podcast, we've talked about, telecom is a phenomenal business, but there's also business in defense, and there's business within the climate, whether that's early detection of wildfire, whether that is methane leaks monitoring. But there are hundreds of others we could have talked about. But the point here is, while each of them are good, solid financial verticals to tap into, the finances get infinitely more interesting when you combine them all onto one platform. And that is what the future holds here. And this is where we are very different from satellites. We're not a one-trick pony.
Right. Where do you think, looking ahead, where do you think the tech innovation in the platform is going to be? Is it going to be in, there's sort of a ultimate physics. Yes, you can make the material lighter, stronger, but ultimately is the sort of key unlock for this kind of looking ahead, the ability to keep this up there longer and longer and longer without having to bring the system back down.
Yeah, that is definitely a key unlock, and you're probably poking at the biggest one.
Got it. What do you think? And then, kind of last question on my end. What do you think is going to be since you brought up the iPhone, I'm going to use this analogy. What is going to be the iPhone moment for a platform like this? What is the use case that you think everyone's going to open up, and it's going to really kind of bring more customers to the table with an understanding that this has substantial potential? What is that? What is that kind of? I hate using this as an analogy, but killer app.
I don't think we should look to one app, because we really want to be loyal to the thinking of infrastructure as a service. And so I think that the moment that we show up as a multi-tenant, multi-purpose, multi-mission platform, that's the moment where all doors unlock for us.
Well, great. Well, look, Mikkel, when I first met you and I heard about your company, I was kind of trying to wrap my head around what it is exactly. And I think it's been amazing to see the progress you've made, both technologically and from an investor perspective, purely the folks that you've brought around the table. So one, congratulations on that. And then two, very much looking forward to seeing how things develop and what's next. What are, for investors and industry folks who are listening to this, who want to stay up to date on the milestones, what are, over the next 6 to 12 months, what are the key milestones that they should be looking out for or thinking about? I know you mentioned you're going to do these tests to kind of figure out exactly what the time is that you can keep the system up. But is that what are some key milestones that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, in the next 6 months, we wrap up our endurance program. And in the next 12 months, we do our first commercial demonstration.
Got it. And who's that first commercial demonstration with?
SoftBank.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we'll be on the lookout for it. Mikkel, thanks so much for being with us. Great to have you here. And until next time.
Thank you so much, Mo. Thanks for having me.